Hi, it's Tracy. Welcome to my home here in Sussex, England. This week we are doing a whole room makeover and we are here in my office. Now this is not going to be a boring office makeover. We're not going to be polishing paper clips. We are going to be doing lots of different makeovers within this room. There'll be all sorts of paint techniques, all sorts of tips and tricks that you can take and use in any room in your house.
So come on in to my bright, beautiful, but very grey office. Oh, please don't judge. I haven't painted this room since 2018-19. So it's 6-7 years out of date. Now, this is Bertie. If you're new here, he's my furry supervisor and you'll be seeing lots of him through the video. This chair is definitely going to get a makeover. It's had several coats of paint over the years. Bertie's bed is going to get changed as well. Absolutely love this. But that grey is not rocking it for me anymore. The paintwork's solid. That's absolutely fine. So I'm going to work with that. The angle poised lamp, that's a makeover. And the desk. Oh, goodness me, this desk is in need of some work. In fact, it is the desk that actually has driven me to do this room. I'm going to do something with those metal stacking trays and also the wooden tray as well. This little area here where I have a printer, it's a bit of a dump at the moment, so we need to tidy up that area. The chair itself, I'm not going to reupholster, but I am going to dress it differently to make that grey work with the colour scheme. The rug has to go. It served me well, but it's going. The chandelier, I'm going to do a little tweak to this, and it's a really simple tweak. And I may or may not tweak this mirror. It depends how the scheme starts to come together. The grey of the radiator, I'm not going to change that. I'm just going to work with that colour. This wall has always been empty, but it is time to put something on. Now, this whole scheme has been inspired by these eBay handles that I found for just £12. I popped a paint order into my paint supplier, Dovetails. Now, they're a local company to me, but they do have an Amazon store. So all the paints I'm using today, all the products, I will link in the description below. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you'll know that these colours are not my normal choice. I've also ordered some craquelure. Normally, I use glue to create some hazing, but this time I'm going to use an Annie Sloan product. I tend to lean into a neutral colour palette. I have dabbled a little bit outside with Capability Green, but for this makeover, I'm going to use some brighter colours, but in a subtle way. Now, this rug had to go. It's been donated to my local charity shop, and this is its replacement. I got this off Amazon, so I'll link it down below. It came all folded up with creases in it, so I've just stretched it out for a few days to let those relax out. Now, Bertie's bed, really top quality bed. This was on a brand collaboration for Bertie, probably back in 2020. He is a doggy influencer. It is superb quality. So this is coming up 5 years old, super condition, but it's a very expensive bed. So I'm thinking, could I dye the cover? I love using these Dylon pods. They're super simple to use. I'm going to try the brown one. Popped it in the washing machine and it didn't work. So obviously no natural fibres in there. So it is now a very clean bed, still in really good quality. So I'm going to keep that as a spare cover, and I'm going to go onto Ivy and Duke and order a replacement cover, £99. They are not cheap, but they're superb quality. And this is the colourway I've gone for. So now I'm thinking, can I make that work with the rug? The sleepless nights. Anyway, let's get back into the room. It's all been cleared. And after discussions with hubby about whether or not we should move away from the white walls, we decided, no, let's just repair the cracks and I'll keep the walls white. Now, remember, this is 6-7 years since this room was painted. Part of it is timber frame. So, of course, there is going to be movement. Now, when you're repairing cracks, first thing you've got to do, and I know it's counterintuitive, is make the crack bigger. If you've got a hairline crack, which can be so annoying, the way to stop that running is to put a line down or drill a hole at the end of the crack and it'll stop it spreading. I like to use this decorator's tool, but any sharp implement will do it. Now, to make sure that the repair doesn't open up again, I'm going to use scrim tape. This is a tape that you would tend to use when you're putting plasterboard on a wall. So I measure out, cut, and then as it's got an adhesive to it, it just sticks over the crack. You could actually put filler on first, then the scrim tape, and then build up with your filler. But this is the way I prefer to do it. Now, regulars will recognise this bag of Easy Fill. I use it for my faux stone effect. And today we're actually going to use it for its intended purpose as a joint compound. You build this up. It'll probably take 2-3 layers to get a really good bond here. And once that has fully dried back, you could hand sand it, but that's very dusty. And I have got this lovely big Merca sander, so I'm going to put 180 grit on. It's got a vacuum attached to it, an extraction unit. And as you can see, there's zero dust. Onto the chandelier now, and we're going to give this a little mini makeover. I brought 5 of these from my last house, and this one in the office is one of the smaller ones. Now, I've hung it from rusting chain, and after a good clean, I've decided I'm going to remove the little candle holder covers. It's a really super quick, easy way of just giving a little twist, but we'll come back to that later. Let's get on with the desk and let's start with the drawers. The old handles I've removed are going to go into my handle stash and they'll be used in other projects. I'm going to fill up the handle holes, but the actual keyholes I'm going to leave. I'm using a quickset wood filler and I like to put it on with a artist's knife so you can really push it into the hole. And once I've worked it in and left it slightly proud, I tend to use a damp cloth just to wipe off the excess, and then that cuts down on the sanding. So we'll leave that to dry. Let's just keep checking back in with our colourways. So we've got to make this rug and the dog bed work together. So I've pulled out all my Annie Sloan paints along with the new ones. And the one that keeps catching my eye is olive. I think that's going to work beautifully with these 2 items. Now, the sun may be shining, but it is a freezing cold day. So we are very much going to have to paint indoors. I much prefer to be outside or in my garage, but the paint's just not going to go off. Paint needs to be at room temperature to really work properly. So I've got set up in here. I've got the old desktop, which you can see underneath was this red colour. We've had this for years and years. And actually here, the sanding is only to take off the flaking paint. I'm not really trying to bring that paint down and take it off. So I've got my Annie Sloan. It's at room temperature. I'm going to stir it and then stir it more. I can't emphasise enough the importance of really stirring your paint. Isn't that just a delicious colour? First pass with the roller has given such lovely texture, and this project is all about texture. So now I'm going to move on to the 2 pedestals, and I always like to start upside down. Whilst that first coat is drying, let's jump back onto the drawers and get that wood filler sanded down. I've set the drawers out in the shape that they would sit in the desk, and I've pulled out 4 different paint colours. So here I've got Barcelona orange, Arles, French linen and original. Checking back in with the rug again to make sure those tones are going to work. You'll notice that sometimes I paint straight from the tin, other times I decant into another vessel. It really depends whether or not I'm going to corrupt the paint that's in the tin. Now, on this one, I want to use the same brush all the way through. So I started off coming out the tin and then, Bertie just needs love. And when he needs love, that's it. There is no stopping him. He demands it. Anyway, without corrupting any tins of paint, all the drawers have been painted in the 4 colours with one brush, saving on washing up. The paint has been decanted into separate containers because now I'm going to add my Easy Fill. This is such a versatile product. I use it in so many different ways. So I'm going to put some into another container. And why I am using this is to add texture. I want to use a coordinating paint and then just dab my brush into the powder, work it into the paint, and then I'm going to let that thoroughly dry. The specks of powder you can see here, the white specks that are not completely worked in, it's not a problem because they're going to be absorbed when the next layer of paint goes on. Now we're going to take our containers and go back to the desk. I've done 2 coats of the green now and I've completely let that dry. So now we're going to start doing a similar technique with the different colours, with the joint compound, and working it in sections around the top. And then we're going to do the pedestals as well. A hot soapy wash cleans the brush up beautifully. And a blast with the hairdryer ensures the drawer fronts are ready for a coat of paint. We are going to go on with the olive. And there are no neat brush strokes for this technique. I'm going on with lots of stippling motions, different thicknesses of paint, and it's a broken paint effect. So you can see the underneath colour showing through. So whilst all that is thoroughly drying, we're going to go back to the desktop and the pedestals. I've got my old white out, but then I remembered I've got a tin of original that I really don't get on with that well. So this is a great way of using that up. I'm using, again, not neat brush strokes. This is lots and lots of dabbing and stippling and thicknesses, different thicknesses of paint. And yes, it is going to look like a hot mess, but you have to trust the process. Back to the drawer fronts, and I'm just going to hand sand over all of them, and that will knock back those raised areas where I put the joint compound on, revealing all the different tones underneath. And then we're ready for the craquelure. Now, normally I do this technique using glue, but this time I thought I would use Annie Sloan. It's a 2-part process, and this is about creating cracks that the wax then sits on. It's not about cracking paint. So on step 1, it is a case of really making sure that you apply this over every bit of the surface. It's very runny, so you really need to take care with this. I'm not putting it round the edges because I only want the cracks on the front. I'm actually going to put 2 coats of this on, letting it dry in between, and you can see it gives almost like a varnish effect to it. You then go on with step 2. Now, I've used this in the past, and step 2 can sometimes be the consistency of Vaseline. This one seems a bit runnier. Maybe the formula has changed. I don't know. But I apply this step 2 in a crisscross motion. So making sure that I, again, cover the whole of the front. And you can see it's almost self-leveling. I'm doing it in different thicknesses as well. The thicker it is, the bigger, the deeper the cracks. You need the hairdryer to activate the cracking, but once that is completely dry, then I'm going to slather this baby in dark wax and really work it into all those cracks and bring the wax down around the edges of the drawer. Now, whilst those drawer fronts are drying, we're going back onto the desktop and I'm going to use my marker, but just with a 180 grit on, just to gently take back all those raised areas to create the effect. And then the whole thing is going to be sealed in lashings of dark wax. Watch the effect appear. Whilst the desk is drying, let's move on to some more makeovers. Now, I've got 2 chairs in the office. Each one of these belongs to a pair. The others are elsewhere in the house. Now, I use this one actually at the desk as my office chair, and the other one is just a spare chair in the room. We quite often end up having conflabs in the office, so it's always good to have some extra seating. I've had these for several years. They were auction finds. But now I want to spice them up a little bit with some similar kinds of techniques. Now, I'm going to go with the Barcelona orange and the Arles. And I always have a damp cloth and a dry cloth when I'm doing paint work. I want to keep using my big fat brush and my thin brush, so this is why I've decanted the paint. And I'm going to use both the colours in different parts on the chairs. So not quite an ombre effect, you know, where you bleed one colour into another, but I'm using different colours around it. So when I do the final distress, you will get very subtle, different tones showing through. Just a hand sand for the chairs, and of course, dark wax. Now to this corner, the dump of a corner. So we're going to go down to my storage shed. In here, I've got all sorts of things waiting for transformations or just general storage. So as soon as I open the doors, I see things that actually would fit in that space. I've got these 2 low coffee tables, had them numerous years, done several different paint effects on them. But my eye is drawn to this little piece of oak. Now, this was part of a job lot from auction. Probably the lot would have been about £20. So you get 4 or 5 pieces in a lot. So I'm saying £4 or £5 for this side table. I would actually like to strip this right back to the blonde wood and maybe wax it up, which I think I will do in the future. But in the meantime, I am going to do a paint effect. I'm going to use the same 2 colours again, so the Barcelona orange and the Arles, but I'm going to use the easy fill on this one, and I'm going to then cover the whole thing in old white paint And this is what we get. Again, it looks like a hot mess, but I think you know by now that you have to trust the process. I have not painted the underneath purposely, whereas I normally do, because I know I'm going to be stripping this back at some stage, and I don't want to make life too difficult for myself in the future. I'm using the Merker to sand this because I want to do some heavy distressing around the edges, and it's just much easier with the machine. Now, at this stage, you may love the effect and actually you just want to put clear wax on to protect it. It will slightly darken it, clear wax, but for me, it's going to be the dark one. Remember this blank wall, and I said I wanted something on there? Well, I've got a cracker to show you now. This has been sat in my garage for well over a year. I can't even remember exactly when I bought it. I bought it from a local charity shop, and I think I paid either 70 or 75 pounds for it. And over the year, I've been in there having a little scrape, a little dig, thinking, what on earth should I do to it? How should I finish this? It weighs an absolute ton. It is so heavy. At this stage, I still don't know what I'm going to do with it. So I've got it into the house. I've got my decorator's tool out, which is great for scraping back. It's covered in a gloss paint. So somebody has obviously taken a brush to this. It's got so many different colours underneath it. So I'm just going to have a really good play with it. You can see it is damaged in so many ways. It's cracking, it's hazing. But hang on a minute, I've just spent ages trying to create a hazing effect. So I've tried a little bit of dark wax on it and thought, oh, hello, I quite like that. I'm carrying on cleaning it up. And I'm just using a blade to take off all the little bits of stale paint. You know, they've painted it with the glass in. I'm using the scraper as well to take off some black paint, just creating a lovely distress. I even had the heat gun out at one stage. I absolutely went for this. So now it is thoroughly cleaned. It's all been chipped away and rubbed back, and the dark wax is coming out. Now, one little tip when you're painting or waxing a mirror, take a piece of paper and then just slide it between the glass and the frame, and that way you won't get any of your product on your lovely clean glass. After doing the other mirror, I think this one is going to be too white. So I've brought that into the kitchen and I'm going to cover it in, you've guessed it, dark wax. And whilst I've got the dark wax out, I'm going to give a little makeover to this tray. It's a very cheap one. It was just from HomeSense, but it's always handy to have a tray on a desk. Back to the chandelier. Now, we've taken off the little covers that sit over the lamp holders. They're bright chrome. I don't want them bright chrome. So I'm going to use a mixture of matte black paint and my favourite gold spray, which is almost like a brass colour. I don't like spraying in the house, but it's so cold outside. I've made a little spray zone, popped my two different colours on, and once they're thoroughly dry, I'm going to stipple dark wax over them. It's a very small detail, but I always think good design is about those small details. The metal filing trays, which are chrome and they really are not going to work in this colour scheme, are going to get the same treatment. I'm just going to use the gold spray this time and then finish them off once they're thoroughly dry with the dark wax, and that will just help to coordinate them with the desktop. Now, the angle poised lamp is a different kettle of fish entirely. This was very expensive and we've had it a long time. Should I risk it, Bertie? Go on, should I risk it for a biscuit? Oh, do you know I am? I'm going to do it because it's not working for me in the chrome. I love it. I don't want to get rid of it. I just want to change a colourway. It was a bit tricky to spray paint this in the house. Ideally, I would have taken it apart and done it all out in the garage, but as I say, it's just too cold. So it went into various positions and I managed to get it all sprayed. So once I'd got that first coat on, I brought it down into the kitchen and then I decided, yeah, well, you know what's coming, don't you? Yep, it's the dark wax. You will have probably noticed that I didn't cover up the flecks when I was spray painting. That was because I knew I was going to wrap it. Wrapping flexes on lamps is a technique that I use all over the house. I only ever do it on LED bulbs that don't pull through a huge amount of electricity, so it's not a fire hazard. I'm quite pleased with the result of that. In fact, I'm more than pleased. I absolutely love it. So I think the message here is if you don't like something, be brave, just change it. Now, I quite fancy this chap for on the desk, so I think we'll call him Boris. And yeah, I think we're going to darken him in the wax and give him a little bit of suntan. I think he's going to look fabulous on the desk. Now, let's go and solve the problem of how to hang a very heavy mirror onto a plasterboard wall. This is an amazing product. It looks so small, but it really does work. So on the left, you can see this is how it looks on the outside. On the other side, you can see that's behind the wall. So these little flippers come out. Now, I've got a 15mm drill bit and I am going in and making my hole on both sides. Bearing in mind, I have measured and measured. I'm tapping these in, then you use a little screwdriver and twist, and that puts those flippers out at the back. This tiny little screw goes in and it takes the weight. I mean, this is so many kg, I cannot tell you. It takes 2 men to lift this mirror. I am so impressed with this product that I am going to be buying so many more of them and hanging so many things on plasterboard. Now, they are available on Amazon, so I will drop the link below because I do get messages from people all the time asking for advice on this type of stuff. Well, here is a product that I have tried and tested and it works. Now let's carry on bringing our makeovers in and we'll get this room dressed. I've brought in a big twig heart that was living down in the storage shed. I've used it in various places around the house, but it wasn't quite the right shade. So I popped it into the garage when it wasn't too cold one morning and gave it a quick blast over with this slightly olivey, khaki green spray that I've had for ages. Beneath that, I've sat a wreath that I made some time ago. I think it was in my autumn decorating, and they're leaves from the garden. And a mirror that I picked up at auction last year. You will have seen that in one of my shopping videos. It's got this amazing vintaged glass. You know, it's all peeling at the back. I just absolutely love it. And I've popped that on the wall. That's just been sat in a corner of the sitting room. So it's absolutely wonderful to have it up and out on display. I've brought the rug into the office just to check that the colours are still working with what I'm bringing in. Another small detail, I wonder if you've noticed, the wall lights used to come straight out the arms and then they would go at a 90 degree, the bulb would drop down. I've changed those to a 45-degree angle. Bertie's saying, yeah, all very well, all lovely, but where can I sit, Mummy? I need somewhere to sit. Now, we do have the chair to bring in, so we'll pop that in that corner. And then just to soften that grey, I'm going to use some different fabrics. Only Bertie will barely wait for me to actually titivate and arrange my throw. Gosh, he's so demanding, this boy. The desk is in, but all the wires are looking a bit of a jumbled mess. So the easiest way I've found with these is just to use elastic bands and just wind things up and scoop them up and then hide them behind the desk. Let's bring a few more things in. Time to finish the drawer fronts off now and attach the handles that were the absolute inspiration and start of this whole project. So I've put the drawers in the sequence and I've worked out the sequence of the handles. Now, the screws that I've got are bright chrome. Not ideal, but it's not a problem because I'll show you a little tip with that in a moment. It's really easy to attach these handles because we've got the keyholes, so we know exactly where the center point is. What I'm doing is using the keyhole as the center point and then just doing a very small little pilot hole, so not going all the way through, part attaching each of the screws, and then it gives you a little bit of wriggle room just to maneuver that handle, and then you can tighten up the screws so you get the handle exactly how you want it. Job done. But yeah, as expected, does look a bit pants, doesn't it, with that chrome head? So the way to rectify that is, yay, dark wax. Little bit of dollop on. Remember, it sets really hard, so it just knocks back that colour and we can pop those drawers in. And yes, I could close them all the way, but I actually love seeing the different colours, so I'm leaving them all slightly proud. Life on the wild side. I hope this has given you loads of inspiration. Thank you so much for watching, and join me next time when spring decorating starts.